And that brings us on to the next of the waves, which is where it's not even about humans anymore, it's about machines. This is wave 8, rise of the machines. There's something happening in the world today that most of us are not aware of. If you are trading the stock market, be aware that over 90% of all the trades on the stock market today in every country are done by machines, not by humans. They're all already calculated in to be smarter than you are. Be very aware that when it comes to not just trades on the stock market, but decisions on many things being made in business, it's machines already that are making those decisions. Even when you go to Amazon.com and you are looking for a new book, and Amazon says, we think these are the books that you would most be interested in. And you go, wow, that's amazing, that's exactly the book that I want. Or you go to a smart TV, and it says, hey, maybe you're interested in watching this video. And you go, oh, that's just the video I want to watch. It was the machine that decided that for you. So machines are taking over, and over half of the traffic now of data on the internet is through machines. It's not even business to business or person to person. It's robot to robot, connecting up through information. This is me here in the Google car, the robot car, no hands. This has now got permission to drive to Nevada and California. It's already started to happen. I remember making a joke just 1 year ago, or was it 2 years ago now? No, it was 1 year ago, about how our iPhones would start to talk to us. This was before Siri came out. I was like, you know what? We are going to start having a relationship with our machines. We're going to actually have our machines talk to us, and we'll talk back. In fact, our biggest problem with our iPhone won't be the technology. It'll be worrying whether our iPhone likes other iPhones more than it likes us. So this is all at the early stages, but you're going to see it more and more, where you're going to have machines talking to you and actually being more intelligent about you than most humans are, and understanding that more. So this means that we're actually moving into a very, very different way of looking at things. You all will have heard of Google Glass, which is now available in America and is going on public release all over the world this year, in I think September, October. We're now at a point where we're able to wear our computers. This happened in China. Microsoft, to showcase a real-time speech translator, where Steve Ballmer spoke in English, American, and it came out in Chinese, just by basically listening and then simultaneous translation. Which is very sad for our translators at the back, which means that we're out of the job. No, they're too good. They're too good. Can you give our translators at the back a big round of applause for keeping up? So we're already seeing this shift that's happening, and it's really shifting everything. When you think of something like robot cars, the fact that with cars that can drive themselves, just that one simple thing that's now already possible. The Google cars have done hundreds of thousands of miles with no crash. So it's possible they can drive anywhere now without humans. And when I met up with Sebastian Thrun, who is the person who created the Google car, when you hear the vision, and he says, well, number one, do you realize that the biggest source of deaths for young people is car accidents? We are getting rid of all those car accidents and all those deaths. That already changes everything. But then he says, and as well as that, with the traffic jams, the amount of time we spend in traffic jams, they're human created. You don't need traffic jams. It's the starting and stopping time which makes them happen. And even in the traffic jam, when it's moving, about half or 3/4 of all that space is just stopping distance. So with cars that are computerized, that doesn't happen. He says the third thing is that when you have got cars that can drive themselves, you don't need car parks anymore. Because cars spend 90% of their time in car parks, and of course, if it drives itself, it will drop you off where you want to go and go drive somewhere else. No more changes our whole city where there's no car parks. Right now, suddenly everything changes. And when you think about energy consumption, over half of the entire weight of a car is to protect the human inside from themselves from crashing a car. But when cars don't crash anymore, you don't need all that extra metal. And you actually make a car which is much lighter, which is cheaper, and which doesn't use all that petrol. And so you can get to solar energy much easier when you bring all of that down. So everything's going to change in the next 10 years when it comes to the next big wave in computers, which is with cars and with the machines. And this is where it all comes into like real life, where we're going. And that's the real key here. Is it time to ban autonomous killer robots before it's too late? It's like what happens when we already have machines that are making decisions on things which are different from the ones that we would want to make. So where does this all lead? Where does this go? 30 years from now, what does it all look like? 30 years. Remember I said 30 years ago, people wouldn't even believe the internet. Well, 30 years time, where we're going to be is going to be very different. Think about your age right now. Think about adding 30 years to your age. We're also going to be here on the planet. Think about your children being 30 years older. And now, imagine what life will be like after you see this video, which I'm about to share with you, of what will be happening in 30 years' time. This is like one of the biggest things in technology. By the way, before I show this, I'm going to ask you a trivia question. If you had to choose one thing that you think would be the biggest shift to humanity through technology coming up our way, I haven't covered it yet. I haven't mentioned it yet. It's the biggest one of all. What do you think that would be? And by the way, this is one thing that all the top scientists and even entrepreneurs actually all agree on. What do you think this thing would be? Take a moment with the person next to you and see if you can come up with what you think would be the biggest transformation from technology in the next 30 years. What do you think? Come on with something. There is something that's coming our way which can be predicted. When you have a trend line, you can predict things. This man here, who is part of starting up Singularity University, he is a genius in America. His name is Ray Kurzweil. Here he is getting presented with the National Medal of Technology from President Clinton. It's like the highest award for technology. He has been involved in technology for 40, 50 years. And what he has here is a graph, where the graph shows for $1,000, how much computing power you can buy. And it starts from the very beginning, 1900s, when it was just vacuum tubes that they were using, all the way through to basically switches, all the way through to silicon chip. And he's shown that there's an algorithmic chart where the speed of growth is exponential because of Moore's law. For $1,000 what you can actually buy. And what you see here is that this actually hit the threshold of one insect brain by the year 2000, which meant it had the same computing power for $1,000 as an insect brain. It got up to by about 2010, up to one mouse brain. Before 2020, you'll be able to buy for $1,000 more computing power than an entire human brain. And by the time you get to 20, 40, 30 years time, for $1,000 will be the equivalent of all the human brains on the planet put together. For $1,000. Now the question is, what does it mean in computing power? Does that mean intelligence? Will we get to a point where a machine can become more intelligent than a human? So this has already started to happen where IBM, first of all, had something called Deep Blue to play Kasparov chess. And it was number crunching. It went through every pattern recognition to play, and it actually beat. First of all, someone said a computer could never beat a human at chess because chess is a game which requires a high level of intellect. But they proved a computer can actually easily beat a human. So then people said, no, a computer is only a calculator. So it can only beat a human in calculation. Chess is like a calculation of many different options. So as long as it's big enough, it can beat, okay, that's fine. But it will never understand language and understand the idea of thinking things through with meaning. What is the meaning of things? So IBM built a new computer, which is called Watson, after Thomas Watson, who launched IBM. And if you've ever heard of a game show called Jeopardy! Jeopardy is where they ask riddles, like in a crossword, and you have to think what are they actually asking. And so they give the answer, and you've got to give it as a question. And Jeopardy! Last year, they had Watson play against the world champion at Jeopardy and beat by a long way the world champion by giving all the answers. And these were very complicated questions which you would think only humans would understand. And so they've already basically got to a point where computers are getting smarter than humans are. If you've ever played any big computer game, like one of the online games, like Call of Duty or Modern Warfare, you wouldn't know the difference of a soldier in the game that was a robot compared to a soldier which was human nowadays, because they're so realistic. And so you already have a situation which is moving to what Ray Kurzweil calls the singularity. The singularity is going to happen in the next 30 years. And it's the point at which computers become more intelligent than humans do. And not only become more intelligent, but then can create new robots or new computers that are more intelligent again and again. So what happens is we can only create things up to our level of intelligence. If something more intelligent than us, with high levels of memory, high levels of calculation, high levels of thinking things through, can actually create something much faster and better, and then they can create more and more. We create a new level of evolution, which is why it's called the singularity. It's a point at which human evolution is no longer the highest level of evolution. We've already created an evolution which is beyond those animals, which is why we've extended ourselves and accelerated beyond animals. Computers will do the same against humans. So they'll actually effectively become a new level of intelligence which is much, much higher than humans are. And it will happen in the next 30 years. This year is one of the results of that. And this is from Time magazine, 2045, 30 years from now. And you can see the title there. It says the year man becomes immortal. What Ray Kurzweil believes, and there's many who believe it with him, is that when the singularity happens, we will no longer be trapped in our body because we will merge with the computer. We will be able to download our information and our knowledge. We'll be able to back it up. And we'll be able to either prolong our body much longer by replacing body parts, or just connect with computers so that we don't need any of those organic body parts. And effectively it means at that point, we will live forever. So that's why it's called the singularity, because it actually changes humans and their lifetime, but it also changes computers and our relationship with computers. Here is a video of this, which explains this a little bit more, and I'm sure we'll do the best at translating. But again, this is not something just one or two people are thinking about. It's something that there's actually entire groups now in America working on and around the world. And this video explains a little bit more about what this is.
The singularity is the idea that there is a singular point in development history where computers catch up to be as intelligent as people are. And since the rate of progress of electronics is faster than the rate of progress of biological systems, there's a point when computers match people at which things are irreversibly altered, at which computers then keep on improving faster and people potentially stay with our own cognitive architecture and we don't get to really improve nearly as fast.
The singularity is a term that has been given a lot of different meanings by a lot of different people. The best claim to priority is probably Werner Vinci, who said that the singularity is the breakdown in our model of the future that occurs when that model predicts the rise of smarter than human intelligence. Another meaning of the singularity is I.J. Good's intelligence explosion, that when an AI got smart enough, it would be able to enhance itself, become even smarter, then use that improved intelligence to make it itself even smarter, and so on and so forth. The Kurzweil branch of it is technology is accelerating exponentially, and therefore at some point you get a very large amount of technological progress dropped into a very short time.
Within 20 years, we'll have models and simulations of every region of the brain, and we will create intelligence in a machine that matches human intelligence in every way that humans are now more powerful than machines. By 2045, that intelligence will be 1 billion times more powerful than all biological intelligence on Earth today. So we are in fact going to merge with that intelligence. And so we will ultimately become predominantly non-biological, but it will start with this kind of merger.
We actually can, I think, say reasonably that in the lifetime of people alive today, that there will be such a major change in our ability to shape our biology that human beings will be taking control of their own evolution.
Will it create a robotic race that oppresses and kills all of humanity? Does it allow us all to go on perpetual vacation and live in total luxury? Do human beings become irrelevant, or do they become important? We have no clue, really. We can make all kinds of speculative predictions, but we don't really, we can't say what will happen.
Clearly, there's a part of us that's all about more. And that's the part that finds all this appealing. I mean, there's nobody who doesn't look at the prospect of immortality or superhuman powers or whatever and think, oh, yeah, that'd be kind of cool, whatever. The much more profound part of the human being is the part of us that's able to look at that a second time and say, no, that's not where I want to go.
At the moment already, scientists have been able to track the brain to see exactly what neural patterns are firing when spirit is experienced. Which, yes, does mean that even machines in the future can experience spirit, can experience conscience. It's already got to a point where they're now talking about at what point when a machine is able to be aware of itself, that it actually fights for its will to live, where it becomes aware that if it actually gets shut down, it will die. There's no question that there already are machines that do that in the army that will fight to make sure it stays alive and it corrects itself. They already have them in space which actually repair themselves. And at what point do they actually take that in their own hands to actually have that will to live? At what point do you have robot rights, where a robot has a right to live? These are all things that seem obvious when you have got something which is made of metal next to something which is made of flesh. But as you can see from some of the earlier waves, there's a problem with that, because more and more we can add metals to our flesh and we can add flesh to the metal. So before you know it, it isn't even clear which is which. I remember when I first spoke to the first group about all of this, adults, entrepreneurs, they were all of them, just very unhappy. They said, no, this is not good. They're saying, this is terrible. We're all going to become pets for robots. Then I went home to see my children. 4 years ago, my children were younger. And I remember explaining to them and showing them the video. And they all were very excited. They're like, this is great. I was like, very different reaction. So I said, why is it great? And my son Luke, who was like 9 years old, he goes, well, Dad, it seems to me all of the problems in the world were created by humans. And I thought about that. And the only reason I think humans have done it isn't because they're bad people. They're just not very smart. Because maybe if we had some smart friends who are smarter than us come to help us, then maybe we can actually solve these problems. Because we all want to solve them, we're just not smart enough to solve them. I thought that was very interesting, different view. Of course, he didn't get brought up with movies like Terminator. Did you ever see Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator? Yeah, it's like not a... Yeah, so robots can be evil. So we don't know at the moment what's going to happen. We just know it's going to happen. We don't know what it's going to look like. We just know it's moving very, very quickly. And in the next 5 to 10 years, whatever you're doing now to run your business, whatever you're doing now, the jobs that you have, everything will change. It will either change because of the machinery we talk about, the printing. It will change because suddenly the job you're doing can be done by a machine easier. It will change because suddenly governments shift how they're managing currencies, like they already are, and new opportunities show up where there weren't opportunities before. It will show up because suddenly everything becomes instantaneous translation, and you can just as easily do business with someone in South America as someone in Russia, whereas today all of that is difficult because we speak different languages. All these will disappear, and suddenly new dynamics will show up, which is all the more reason that I believe that me keeping up to date with the trends is not just a good thing to do, it's a must thing to do. And for all of us to keep up with the trends is super important so that we can make sure that whatever we're doing is the best thing we can be doing right now, and we're surfing the right way and not the wrong way. And we know when to get off.